My name is Maggie, and I'm a 29-year-old employee at a company. This year, I married my husband William after dating for over 2 years. We began our married life in the apartment I have lived in since my single days, a gift from my father when I first started working. With my brother and his wife deciding to live with our parents, I took the opportunity to start a new chapter in my life by moving out. My father, not lacking in resources, bought me an apartment near our family home. Whether he intended to provide support or simply keep me close, I found myself in a wonderful, spacious apartment. William, on the other hand, had been living in a small apartment, which became too cramped for both of us. As soon as we decided to get married, he moved into my larger space. The first time I visited William's family home, located in a region heavy with snow, was during winter. Coming from the city, the amount of snow and the coldness were astonishing. His family's house felt like something out of a fairy tale, with my mother-in-law and brother-in-law living there. In the past, when my father-in-law was alive, they lived as part-time farmers, surrounded by fields and distant neighbors. What surprised me even more was that the toilet and bath were located outside the house. While I could tolerate it for occasional visits, the idea of living there long-term, especially during harsh winters, seemed inconvenient and challenging. It took courage to venture out to the toilet in the middle of the night, and I worried about catching a cold after showering in dropping temperatures. During my visit for our marriage ceremony, I didn't stay overnight, so I didn't experience the full hassle of the outdoor facilities. However, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law were kind and welcoming, which eased my concerns about living there. Although we wouldn't be living together, I wanted to build a harmonious relationship with them. Yet something nagged at me. Whenever my mother-in-law was alone with my husband, she seemed to murmur complaints about something. What bothered me even more was that my brother-in-law had been married before and divorced after about a year, a detail my husband kept from me. While I understood that marital issues could arise, my husband's silence on his brother's divorce prevented me from asking further. At our wedding, my mother-in-law wore a beaming smile, which my father praised as a sign of her kindness. I smiled back, but my mother had a slightly different opinion. Despite her smiles in front of others, she often appeared grumpy when she thought no one was looking. Be careful, she might be two-faced, my mother advised me, but I brushed off her concerns, believing there wouldn't be any issues unless we lived together. Indeed, we began our married life in the apartment happily, without any worries. However, 3 months after our marriage, my husband started pushing all household chores onto me and making decisions unilaterally. Despite both of us working and promising to share household duties, he began to slack off. Initially, he helped with cleaning the bathroom and occasionally prepared dinner when I came home late. But lately, he became reluctant even to do these tasks, leaving everything to me. If I came home late and started cooking, he would sometimes shout in irritation, "Hurry up and make it. I'm hungry from working." I, too, came home tired and hungry from work, often finding myself preparing dinner while feeling irritated. More than that, I was upset that he decided everything on his own. Perhaps there were signs before we got married, but I misunderstood and thought he was a decisive and reliable man. Not long after our wedding, furniture and a sofa suddenly arrived at our place. I was shocked and asked my husband, "What's this about? Where do you plan to put this sofa and furniture?" With a smile, my husband replied, "I don't feel the current vibe of this room suits me, so I thought of replacing the furniture with ones that match my taste." He wanted to dispose of all the furniture I chose and change the ambience of the room with furniture that matched his own preference. If he had consulted with me, we could have gone together to select the furniture. But my husband acted on his own accord, disregarding my preferences completely. It was okay for him to style his own room however he wanted, but I disliked him unilaterally changing the shared living space. His sense of design lacked coherence, and I was left speechless by his choice of mismatched furniture colors and shapes. Then, an unexpected proposal came up. "It would be nice if you could pay for it." After all, this was originally your apartment, wasn't it? Frankly, I was already frustrated that he had taken over the living room with his tasteless furniture. But now he was asking me to pay for it. I wondered if he was joking and asked him again, why should I pay for it? Moreover, it's the furniture you bought on your own. Normally, I don't talk back, but this time I responded strongly. My husband seemed lost for words, but he apparently didn't want to spend his own money. This year marked our first Christmas since getting married, so we decided to spend the holidays at his parents' home. It was my first day at my in-laws' house, so I was anxious and nervous. At that moment, my mother-in-law spoke with a kind smile. Maggie, you can relax here. However, I couldn't just sit idly, heeding my mother's advice. I remained cautious, as there might be a hidden side to my mother-in-law. When I first arrived, my mother-in-law did nothing but rest. In the past, brides had to eat alone in the kitchen. It's nice that we can eat together now, she remarked, confusing me with her stories from the past. I noticed my brother-in-law cautioning her, but my husband seemed oblivious. After enduring sarcastic remarks from my mother-in-law, I offered to clean up after dinner. She smiled but said, I'll do it. I wouldn't want you to break our precious dishes. It made me realize my mother's advice was spot on. The first day was filled with her sarcasm. The next day, however, things took a turn for the worse. That evening, my husband went out drinking with friends and with my brother-in-law on a Firebird Day trip. It was just my mother-in-law and me. To be honest, I was quite nervous. After dinner, while she was in the shower, I could relax a bit. But when she came out, she said, I'm going to bed now. Make sure to lock the front door. I awkwardly replied, yes, and prepared to take my shower in the separate bathhouse, which was chilly. Local residents might be used to it, but for me, it was tough. After I had settled in, the lights in the main house suddenly went out while I was relaxing in the bathtub. I thought I heard footsteps outside, so I stayed still and listened carefully. After a while, the lights went out, and it became pitch dark. At first, I thought there was a power outage, but when I peeked out the window, the lights in the neighboring house were still on. I began to suspect if my mother-in-law was playing a mean prank on me. I didn't think my mother-in-law would do something so terrible. Since she would make sarcastic remarks with a smile, a feeling of unease arose in my heart, thinking that perhaps it might be possible. I quickly got out of the shower, dried off, and changed into my pajamas. The room was pitch dark initially, and I couldn't see anything, but as my eyes adjusted, the moonlight illuminated the room, allowing me to change. While thinking, what a childish prank to pull, I tried to open the door to go outside. But no matter how hard I pushed, it wouldn't budge. Even body slamming the door didn't help. Panic set in. There was a window, but it was barred from the outside. Fortunately, I had my smartphone with me. I tried to call my husband for help, but he didn't answer. On the third attempt, my husband finally answered the call and suddenly shouted loudly, "Why are you bothering me? Can't you see I'm enjoying myself right now?" It seemed my husband was drunk, but I desperately needed his help, so I pleaded with him. "I can't get out because the bathroom door won't open. Please come here right now." However, it seemed he didn't understand or didn't care, as he responded vaguely, "It's your fault for taking a shower at this time. I'm drunk and can't come. Goodbye." After he hung up, I tried calling him multiple times, but it appeared he turned off his phone. I considered contacting the police or fire department, but thought that should be a last resort. I hesitated to report to the police because I feared my mother-in-law would be angry. First, I tried to find a way to escape on my own. I thought maybe if I shouted out of the bathroom window, someone passing by might notice. However, the window had frozen shut. My husband had mentioned that the pipes sometimes freeze. If I were to be trapped here all night, I might freeze to death. Just as I was reluctantly about to call the police, I heard a voice from outside. "Has the breaker tripped and the lights are out?" "Hello, is anyone inside?" Hearing that voice brought relief. I heard a knocking sound, realizing someone outside was trying to help. And soon enough, the door was opened. I thanked the old man. He sighed and said, "She never learns, does she?" Trying to torment her daughter-in-law again. This old man was a neighbor to my husband's family home. a distant relative of my husband's, and he guided me to his house. Seeing me, his wife looked surprised. After the old man explained the situation, she invited me in. Looking lost for words, the old lady offered me a blanket since I was only in pajamas and served warm tea. Once I had calmed down, the old man told me about my mother-in-law's history of tormenting daughters-in-law. Your mother-in-law has a habit of bullying her son's wives. She's locked several in the bath before. The wife of the eldest son was locked in the bathroom multiple times and eventually left the house. Not only the wife of the eldest son, but when my husband had a different fiancé before, the mother-in-law locked her in the bathroom as well. The old couple had noticed the bathroom light shining in the darkness and grew suspicious, which is why they came to check. The old couple next door knew that my mother-in-law had trapped others in the bathroom in the past, and it seemed they had come to the rescue on several occasions. They were aware of our marriage and seemed to be concerned that my mother-in-law might pull the same kind of prank again. Since it was already late and the main house was locked, I decided to stay with the neighbors for the night. The next morning, I was awakened by the sound of an ambulance siren. As I quickly looked out of the window, I saw an ambulance arriving at my in-laws' house, and my husband was standing still by the detached bathroom. I headed in that direction too, thinking that my husband might have mistakenly believed I was still trapped in the bathroom and called the ambulance. Of course, no one was in the bathroom. I felt sorry for the paramedics who had been called out because of my husband's mistake. When I approached my husband, he began shouting as soon as he saw my face. "Why is my mother lying down there? Weren't you trapped in the bathroom?" Shocked by those words, I peeked into the bathroom, and sure enough, I could see a figure lying down with arms and legs outstretched. The woman being spoken to by the paramedics sat up, touching the back of her head. It seemed her life wasn't in danger, and from her figure, I recognized that it was my mother-in-law. I didn't understand why she was there, but one of the paramedics explained. She appears to have hit her head and lost consciousness. We'll take her to the hospital for a checkup. It seems she slipped on the soap that was on the floor and hit her head. In my panic when the lights went out, I might have scattered things like soap on the floor. I couldn't clean it up in the dark, and it seems my mother-in-law slipped on that soap. In the early morning, she probably entered the bathroom to check on me and slipped and fell because of the soap. As my mother-in-law was being carried past on a stretcher, she glared at me with a stern expression. When my husband was taken to the hospital in an ambulance, the neighbors approached and spoke to me. "I'm glad nothing happened to you. It's divine punishment for the harassment you faced as a daughter-in-law." I thanked the neighbors again, realizing that if it weren't for the old man, I might have been the one in the ambulance. I quickly changed and informed my brother-in-law that my mother-in-law had been taken to the hospital. He said he was heading to the hospital right away. Alone, I went to the detached bathroom and reflected on the previous night's events. At the bathroom door, there was a stick used to bar the door shut. This was why I couldn't get out. That afternoon, my mother-in-law returned home with my husband and brother-in-law, and she directed her anger at me. "Because you left the bathroom without telling me this happened." As I thought of responding, my husband also showed his anger. Exactly. If Maggie had just stayed in the bathroom, my mother wouldn't have suffered like this. However, my brother-in-law angrily countered both my husband and mother-in-law. "What are you both thinking? Stop this cruel game of locking my sister-in-law in the bathroom." Later, my brother-in-law reappeared with a travel bag and told my husband and mother-in-law, "I'm done taking care of my mother. I'm leaving this house. Do as you please." Unable to bear it any longer, I asked my brother-in-law, "I'm also leaving. Could you drop me off at the nearby station?" My husband desperately tried to stop me. "Who said you can just leave?" I responded firmly, "Let's get divorced. Did you help me when I begged yesterday? I'll get the divorce papers ready." I got into my brother-in-law's car, and he drove me to the nearest station. He apologized repeatedly. "I'm truly sorry, Maggie. I never thought you would suffer like this. Those cruel people are now strangers to me." I returned to my apartment, prepared the divorce papers, and packed my husband's belongings. He was shocked to see his belongings packed when he returned, thinking my mention of divorce was a joke. Seeing the divorce papers infuriated him. You want a divorce over something so trivial. You weren't injured, were you? Realizing that words were wasted on him, I quietly handed him the divorce papers. Reluctantly, he signed. My husband left my apartment, but it seems he doesn't have the money to rent another place or hasn't yet found a place to stay. The truth is, throughout our married life, my husband was reliant on my income, squandering his own salary and even accumulating debt. After being kicked out of the house, my husband initially stayed with a coworker from his company. However, over time, even that coworker grew distant from him, and it seems he lost all the people who were willing to support him. Losing his home, running from debt collectors, and even losing his job, my husband has been put in a dire financial situation. My mother-in-law has also become the subject of rumors in the neighborhood, saying she harassed her daughter-in-law to the point of divorce. She seems to be avoided by others, and I heard from my brother-in-law that she is living a life of solitude, much like my husband. Furthermore, since my brother-in-law also left the house, she has to make ends meet with just her pension, putting her in a financially difficult situation. In the countryside, a car is essential to go anywhere, but with no one at home and being disliked by the neighbors, it seems she can't get any assistance. It appears that my mother-in-law, abandoned by both family and neighbors, is living all alone. As for my husband, he is overwhelmed with his own problems and doesn't have the capacity to help his mother. After the divorce, I disposed of the tacky furniture my husband had chosen. I started a new life with my favorite furniture, hopeful for a better future and seeking new positive encounters.